welcome, ladies and gentlemen, because it is Valentine's
Day after Valentine's.
We're coming up on Valentine.
It's the vicinity of Valentine.
Fuck it. Today's the Valentine's Day episode. Whoa, Matt. The fuck was that?
It's DEFCON 1. It's Valentine's Day. It's a really bad time of the year.
Okay, look, I get it. Valentine's Day. Some hard issues for single guys like us. But how about we hold off on the DEFCON thing, at least until after the review. Okay? Can we do that?
I'm not going to disarm it.
You don't have to disarm it, just let it go. Thank you. It's Valentine's Day. If you're watching us, you're probably spending a little bit of time alone.
Finish your last box of chocolates and your last bottle of wine from the corner store down the street.
But don't worry, because this year, ShitFlix can be your dates.
Because we don't have them either.
Yes. Thank you, Matt. So,
we wouldn't be here otherwise.
So, instead of being a normal, let's just go see a movie or something date, because, let's face it, this year, if you follow that sort of date, the only movie you're going to see is the new box office smash hit of 50 Shades of Grey that was just released.
Yeah.
Yay.
I've read the book.
I've read the Wikipedia article, but
neither one of us have actually seen the movie yet.
That doesn't matter, because we're not even going to worry about 50 Shades of Grey. This year, we're going original gangster for Valentine's Day.
OG!
We are here to bring you the inventor, nay, the creator of the BDSM subculture.
At least in a literary sense.
Yes.
The Marquis de Sade.
Marquis de Sade.
Yes. Yes, indeed. The original smutster.
I mean, we would bring you a movie about him, but whatever the title is, this isn't it.
It's not even a movie about his writing.
No. Although we have Justine, Marquis de Sade.
For the Misfortunes of Virtue, one of his only finished published works.
Yes. You wouldn't know that, though, because, well, I'm smarter than you. And I'm going to read you a passage from Justine, Marquis de Sade, in order to illuminate his inner workings, the way his mind works, because, well, I'm smarter than you. He gripped her arms, and tying them to her legs, passed round her neck a black silk cord, both ends of which he held in his hands. At will, he was able to tighten the cord around her neck and choke her to death. This torture, Therese, he said, is sweeter than you think. You will feel death through exquisite sensations of pleasure. The squeezing that this cord effects upon the mass of your nerves will set you on fire. If all persons condemned to this torture knew in what intoxications it brings death, they would be less frightened by this punishment and commit their crimes oftener and with far more assurance. This delightful operation, Therese, he continued, will just about redouble my own pleasure, too. Now, if that was grim or dark, the fact that he's choking this girl to get sexual satisfaction, that's fine. That's a good reaction. You are a normal human being. If you found it got somewhat, kinky somewhere in there, that's fine. That's okay. You're still a normal person. You're still a normal human being. You're admittedly in a small subsection of that normal people, but we won't judge. We're better than that. So, that was the mind of Marquis de Sade. This movie, not so much, but we'll get into that during the review because we watched a movie today.
De Sade.
De Sade.
Kinda.
I mean,
kinda not.
In name, definitely. In some of the stuff, maybe. In all that other stuff, fuck it.
Alright.
Where to begin?
Get a bit of history real quick. Marquis de Sade is one of my favorite writers.
Could you tell?
But at the same time, not for many of the reasons you might understand. I respect him as a writer, not as a person. This guy was a scumbag. He was in all definitions of the word scumbag when he was alive. But at the same time, that didn't stop him being one of the most important writers of his era, if not period, when it comes down to challenging censorship and ideas of morality in writing. But one of the main things that people talk about the Sade's writing is the fact that the writing itself is basically the precursor of modern day pornography, as well as modern day literary pornography of the BDSM culture.
Yes.
Now, we brought up 50 Shades of Grey.
We don't want to spend too much time on this. We don't want to make this review about 50 Shades of Grey.
We won't. If you want to see, read my own thoughts about 50 Shades of Grey and whatnot, links in the description.
Yeah, somewhere down there. This BDSM culture has pretty much said, don't think that we're 50 Shades of Grey.
It's not.
BDSM culture is about...
They have disowned this.
It's about breaking down and building up people again. It always had that building up section. Without that, it's abuse. It's abuse, plain and simple.
With kink, there are two consenting adults completely in full understanding of what they do and in which ways they tick in that way.
Yes.
50 Shades of Grey is abuse.
It is someone who is far, far, far more knowledgeable about the subject than the other person, and is trying to take advantage of that.
The funny thing is, this, and I drew this comparison with David already, is the fact that this reminds me, 50 Shades of Grey anyway, and actually a couple of the writings of Sade, which obviously this type of stuff all stems from. Yeah. But at the same time, 50 Shades of Grey, it's like those really twisted hentai where the girl getting raped ends up liking it. That's the equivalent of what I've read in these books.
And again,
in this book, sorry, I've only read the first one, not even trying to read the other two. Sorry, E.L. James.
You can have all your kinks.
Good.
But people...
I'm all for the kink community. Go for it.
Can't be hurt without wanting to be hurt.
This is written by somebody who obviously has Googled BDSM and watched probably a bunch of porn on it, and they're like, alright, this is totally about BDSM. No. No.
And on that note, we do not talk about 50 Shades of Grey anymore.
It might be brought up once in a while,
but not about it. So, this movie, Sade, let me give a
It was shot in what?
Shot in, released in 69.
69.
I am going to give a brief...
It's one of the older movies we've done for the show.
I'm going to give a brief overview of this movie.
And go.
It is tough to give a overview because this is a biopic. This is his life. But what I can say is that it's told through the framing device of a play being put on about his life. And there are different layers.
Him dreaming about his life.
Hold on. He walks into this old place that's owned by his uncle, and his uncle's putting on these plays, if that's even happening. And he loses himself between what's reality, his own memories, and this play being performed about his life. He's not sure what's real, what's fake. He keeps on having different imagined things of a lover he lost named Anne. And throughout the entirety of the thing, while he does have very sexualized romp sections where he gets very violent at times, mostly in the sense of spanking.
And whipping.
And, well, yes, but again, at the...
Except he did have a sword.
Which, again, he used for spanking.
Yeah, that's true.
Typically, what it mostly revolved around was that he saw Anne, the sister of his wife, Renee, as sort of the one who got away, in the sense that if he had her, he loved her. And he could stop this. He could stop his senseless desire for this wanton lust. But in the end, it's revealed that this entire play, this entire facade, what was real, what wasn't, doesn't even matter. It was all in the mind of an older Sade rotting away in an asylum, which was true. He died in an asylum, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So it sort of inceptioned us in that way. It didn't allow you to really tell what was real and what was fake up until that last moment. You didn't know what really happened to him, which I guess is a decent way to tell the story if it wasn't already so much set in stone. We know about Sade's life, don't we?
There's a bunch about it that we do know of, and there's a bunch about it we don't. It was a little bit easier to keep track of him in his later days because he was incarcerated for the better part of his life.
Yes. What, these 28 years?
Something along those lines.
I believe they said 28.
I'm not entirely sure for the full distance. But the thing is, the problem I had, it wasn't the stylization of how he told the story. Actually, I thought that was actually really clever. This movie itself is not really bad.
It's not, no, it's not terrible. It's
it's got some kinks in it that are problems, especially if you're talking about the talking about the character of the Marquis de Sade.
Really, the main character, the driving point of this film, is the biggest problem.
One of the things about this movie. Now, I will say this: the people going into this movie, even though this was done by AIP, American International Pictures, which is known for churning out the drive-in movies of the 60s and 70s.
It was also distributed by Orion, I believe.
Orion. Yeah, well, at least this copy was distributed by Orion at one point. AIP originally distributed before they went out. Zarkov was one of the producers on this movie. Corman wasn't, though. But even though, the thing is, though, this movie had the attitude that the audience automatically knows who the Marquis de Sade is.
Yes.
Which plenty of them could, plenty of them couldn't. I don't know. And to be honest, actually, it really depends.
You told me about this book, that it got over here in 1964? I
got this as a gift. This was a first edition copy of it. It was 64.
If people were only...
I don't know if that was the first time it was ever published in English.
I don't know.
This was the first time it was published in this
But
format.
let's assume America got this around this time.
Yeah.
Then this movie would be coming out just as he becomes known to them, at least through publishing.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, he was aware, especially in France, and actually a good deal of his writings are still not translated into English because they're considered too shocking. He also was the one...
Hold on. With all the stuff you see online nowadays, that stuff is too shocking.
I find that hysterical.
Just burn that into your brain for a second.
de Sade, the one thing is, like, you read his writings and you see the inside workings of his pleasure centers and his brain, but the fact of the matter is the real life of this guy was appalling. This guy treated people like shit. One of the reasons why his books were considered so popular, especially at the time when they were first coming out, was the fact that it was damning the libertine society in France. The nobles and whatnot, the people who thought they were better just because of their status. He was trashing these people, saying that on the outside, they always said, you need to be virtuous, you need to be understanding, you need to be good people, while in secret, they were just debaucherous old men.
Yes.
And women, for that matter. You never get that attitude in this movie.
No.
You never even get an attitude that, like, there was the mother of his wife.
His mother-in-law.
Yeah. And she is, like, constantly bailing him out of problems in this movie, which was partially true from my understanding of what was going on. His wife was one of the few people who stuck with him.
But the thing is that she was also putting him into problems just as much.
Yeah.
There was the one line that you turn the keys both ways.
Yeah.
When referring to his prison cell.
But, like, at the end, near the end of the movie, you're like, you've ruined us, you've caused us, like, I never got that attitude from this. It's like, you've ruined us, like, if anything, I've seen you defending him in more scenes than anything else. How in the world, the problem with this movie is that the de Sade character is not believable. It's not believable to the story of de Sade.
I could almost, not actually, but I could almost pick out a random quote from this book, a random section, and you'd have to wonder what kind of mind could produce it back in those days. Nowadays, it's anybody who doesn't have a part-time job, at least. They sit at their computer and they come up with that in 10 seconds flat. But the issue with this movie is, I don't think it ever portrays de Sade as an appalling figure. It always has him. It has him as Keir Dullea, whatever.
He's the main character in 2001: A Space Odyssey. He plays Dave.
That's not Hal, mind you.
Yeah, not Hal. He's Dave. He's the human. He kills Hal.
He is this character. He is just somewhat of the everyman. there are certain scenes where I feel it does come through that he has issues, but not to the extent where it's Desade's issue.
He seems too... I mean, maybe this is partially because of the actor, maybe this is partially because of the script. He just seems very flat.
Yes.
Desade was never a flat personality. One of the best representations that I've seen of him is when Jeffrey Rush plays him in the movie Quills, where he plays him at the end of his life. Joaquin Phoenix is also in the movie, as well as Kate Winslet. Fantastic film. But the thing is, though, even it shows him when he's really old, and he's already been locked up for like 20-some-odd years, so it doesn't show him in his full debauchery of his youth. But at the same time, he's getting away with it. He's fucking with the minds of all the people near him and what. He's convincing people to do things against, he's extremely charismatic, extremely, what would you say, seductive, too, even in his old age. Kate Winslet's supposed to play a character who's really 16, but they actually say she's 14. But she fell in love with Marquis de Sade at the end of her age because he was so witty, and he was able to use her to smuggle his books out. This guy was unbelievably manipulative. But you never see that in this movie.
In this movie,
he's boring.
I wouldn't say so much boring. Okay, we need to get right off the bat. This movie, when it came to the sex and nudity, it went by every sort of.
It went by one convention.
One convention. That's what I was gonna say.
And this is the AIP convention. This was the thing. If you watch any of the documentaries about grindhouses, this is the thing.
If you're an R-rated film, you may show from the front, chest up.
When it comes to female nudity.
Male
nudity too, for that matter.
And you may show from the back, full. That's bare buttocks.
That is R-rated nudity. And to be honest, actually, that is still R-rated nudity to this day.
But sometimes it fluctuates depending on, how it is. It's not a set line.
Stupid.
Some other day.
MPAA, fuck you.
Some other day. So we need to get that out of the way. This movie has a lot of boobs and a lot of butt. But...
And only in a few scenes, though.
Yes, that's the thing. Whenever they always seem to
the libertine lifestyle.
They always seem to separate out Desade's lifestyle and his debauchery. His life takes place at certain moments.
And he seems like two different people.
And the sex scenes take... Yes, whenever he's in a sex scene, he's like, ah ha 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 ha. Whenever he's just out in public, he's like, yes, well, I don't quite agree with that. You're just an evil person, blah, blah, blah.
You want to see a libertine? Okay, here's a movie called The Libertine with Johnny Depp. Different time period, but basically at the same time, and this is the lifestyle. Bad movie just for the director. Sorry, Lawrence Dunmore. But at the same time, though, this performance is very on point. He is a scumbag in every sense of the word because it's all about hedonism. It's all about what can the most amount of pleasure you can get out and how many people you can thumb your nose at. Marquis de Sade was known, he was actually accused at one point for fanning the flames for the removal of the terror and also thus of the monarchy. Of course, he ended up getting imprisoned and blamed for a whole bunch of stuff, but at the same time, he used the writing for a political reason. The character in this one is never even shown to be writing. One scene, it alluded that he's like, what about your scribbles? Go to your scribbles. I'm like, you never see him writing. One more thing is like, he only quotes the real Desade only like 3 times in the entire book. Entire movie. There's so much material, and it's not copyrighted. So the fact of the matter is, though, you could have had so much material to work with. Turn the guy into a debaucherous person. I've seen the sets used in this movie. You guys had some money to throw around on this.
What you were saying about the writings, he was very much portrayed as very involved in the plays. He was always on stage
and
acting.
Also, but he didn't do a hell of a lot.
But that's where I feel like it
matched
arc words. Hold on,
the theme of the movie.
The arc words, exactly. He made the line of, I'm paraphrasing beyond insane amounts here, but it's essentially, there's nothing real about this world nor what's on the stage. Whatever's real is in our imagination. Which is essentially just like, hey, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. That's how the movie is.
Also, reality is perception. It's
whatever he thinks is real or whatever he thinks is on the stage of his uncle, it's all in a dream. I thought that was pretty clever, but admittedly, it doesn't relate to the character.
Well, actually, that is one of his lines, though.
Yes, and I understand, because they wouldn't put such a big emphasis on it if it wasn't. But it
didn't go through to prove that.
Yes.
It didn't go through to prove that idea. It just kind of was the fact that it was so confusing.
I think what the big problem was is we go into Sade movies expecting what we know about Sade to make an appearance. We expect the hide of a gentleman where there is no Jekyll present.
Yeah.
We expect that. And instead, this movie gave us sort of a Jekyll and Hyde dynamic where the line of demarcation wasn't even slightly blurred. Whenever they went to a scene where he's being debaucherous and he's doing something insanely cruel and something like that, they would change it to a red to pink filter over the camera.
It's all wavy.
Everything would be very quick edits, and everything would be just
it's very disorienting.
A mass of flesh on camera. And when it came down to even in his worst moments, he wasn't seducing these people. He wasn't convincing them of something. He was having fun. He was joking around with them. He was in some light foreplay. And then all of a sudden, he takes it too far in their eyes. And whenever he takes it too far, he gets punished. Every time. For every single one of his things. He beats up this one actress friend of his. And
they end up buying her off.
They end up buying her off. He gets
Which was something that probably happened a bunch for this character.
He gets punished for that. There's one scene where he whips this one girl a bit too hard. All the other girls in their massive orgy come and just whip him back. Every single time he does something wrong in the eyes of Puritan society like that, he gets punished for it, which doesn't strike you as Sade's life. It strikes me as...
Well, he did get punished a bunch, but at the same time, it wasn't too... See, the thing is...
He didn't seduce any of the girls, is what I'm saying.
Well,
all the girls...
He just did the whole...
Exactly. He just stared at them for a while. And I mean, he got to...
And you're not Barry Lyndon, dude, so you can't get away with that.
I imagine it being like, hey, would you like to come up to my room and have sex? He's a very suave gentleman, at least it appeared on the outside.
Now, he did use prostitutes a lot,
yes,
and he used them like property.
Yes.
And at points they alluded to... Now, to be fair, I am taking a step back, and I'm like, this movie was made in 1969, or it was released in 1969. Getting away with literally putting the real debaucherous attitude of the Marquis de Sade on film is still considered controversial to this day. So the thing is, think about that for an instance. The real life of the Marquis de Sade is considered to be so controversial that to this day... it is considered more controversial than the shit that he has written.
Yes.
And that is But Sallow was based off of his work on 120 Days of Sodom. That was made into a movie. Justine was made into a couple movies.
It was actually the suggested movie.
Yeah, right after we were done this.
It popped up. Would you like to watch Justine? And we're like, nah.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't actually seen this copy. There's been a couple, and the most famous one was shot back in the 70s, which I kind of find interesting. But the 60s and 70s is when the censorship laws in America were being in upheaval ever since the publication of William S. Burroughs' Naked Lunch. But the thing is, though, at the same time, there's plenty of really graphic movies at the time, and you don't have to show anything. There was plenty of stuff that was alluded to that worked fine, but the problem is, though, the movie... because of the stylization of it, which I enjoyed, but at the same time, it didn't suit the narrative that they were trying to tell. And they're trying to throw in all these weird forms of mysticism, and you're not sure exactly what's everything. And then at the very end, it may have been all a dream. Yeah. And so I'm like, that kind of pissed me off, actually. Because I'm like, it should have been simply that the movie was this was how the movie, the life of Sade was being represented, rather than this is how the life of Sade was being represented inside the head of Sade.
Yes,
because he wouldn't have thought of his life in those terms. I'm just sorry, he wouldn't.
No, yeah, he even says at one point that he asked for forgiveness just in a panic dream. He asked for forgiveness, and when he wakes up, he's like, "Yes, I have no place to ask for forgiveness." He knows he fucked up. A lot. He wouldn't view.
He knows who he is.
Yeah,
he never apologized for it. That was one of the things about him. And I'm not defending his actions. He was a horrible person. But at the same time, though, because he was so unapologetic, was one of the reasons why he stayed in prison for 28 years. He could have probably said sorry. He could have gone out, but no.
There's two things that I really wanted out of this film. One, I either wanted it to be just a normal. Not normal. There's no such thing as a good normal movie.
Just basically a biopic.
A biopic, exactly. I wanted it to
Give me a biopic.
A description of his life. But also, even if they went with this way of doing it, I also wanted it to start when he started. They showed a flashback to when he was flogged as a young child for peeping in on his uncle, but that what they have that as like his sprouting point, like where it all began for his
Or a possibility, at least.
whatever. But they never show this huge span of time between that and him getting married to Renee, whatever her name is. They never show anything in that amount of time in either real or fake. And I would love to know, what about his early debaucherous adventures? What about that? How did he slowly evolve from the normal forms of sex that like the society would have viewed as normal to what made him decide?
What's interesting also is, like, to elaborate on that point, is the fact that there were plenty of times early in the movie where other characters alluded to Desade's reputation.
Exactly.
But we are never told what it is. You are relying on the fact that you know about the shit that has going on in Desade's childhood.
But all it seems like through the movie is that he's a playboy with a bit of
an anger streak.
Yeah, a bit of a crazy streak. It
But I'm
doesn't
like,
seem like
no.
he is this depraved individual that he was in life.
This guy, when he was in his teenage years, took him. Well, basically, he paid a prostitute, and then he basically disfigured her for life because of the shit that he did. That was when he was a teenager.
Yes.
That was before. Like, now, to be fair, he got incarcerated when he was relatively young, and he stayed there until I don't even know how old he was when he died. But at the same time, though, I'd imagine, especially in the parts where he has been in prison for a long time, that carnal desire in him would be so trapped that it would make him even more of a nightmare to be around than he was before. Because beforehand, he was just indulging in any possible fantasy and desire that he could, which is the definition of hedonism. But when it comes down, when you take hedonism uncontrolled, and uninhibited hedonism, and put it in a cage, it runs rampant inside the cage. So we never saw an evolution of this character.
No.
We just saw this flat-faced playboy just pouting that he's not getting his way.
Exactly.
Sade wasn't like that. He was like that at the same time. He was this privileged asshole of a person and whatnot, and the Libertine people were the rich and powerful, and he married into that and whatnot. But at the same time, though, dude, Barry Lyndon was more of of closer to Desade than this Desade character, and that's saying a lot.
All right. One thing I want to get into really
Made around the same year
was the uncle character.
The uncle, the Abbe.
Abbe de Sade.
Abbe de Sade.
I know that Abbe is like Marquis is a set term.
Yeah, he's a priest.
Yes.
Or
you
preacher, whatever.
know this character. You know this actor.
Yes.
Who is he?
It's John Huston, the director.
Well, not the director of this movie.
Yeah,
director
but
of other movies.
the famous director John Huston, the one who did The Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart.
I was going to say, let's assume that our viewers know nothing. What has he done?
Oh, God, you'd have to pull up a full list. This guy, all right, one of the things, two directors that I say have this, what is it, Robert Altman and John Huston are two directors that died with cameras in their hands. Oh, my God, all right. Treasure of the Sierra Madre, The African Queen, The Man Who Would Be King. Like, if either he's an actor in them or he directs them. What was it? Yeah, the original Casino Royale. Oh, Freud. I don't even know all the movies he's made. The original Moby Dick. The Red Badge of Courage. He's one of the most prolific and eclectic American directors of all time.
And he started this.
And to be honest, actually, this kind of reminds me of Vincent Price back during these days, or Bela Lugosi, these old school actors from old Hollywood finding jobs. The people who took this movie, the guy who's the main character did this right after, or at least in chronological order from the release dates, he did this right after 2001. Damn. Okay.
I mean, to be fair, when you do a movie as interesting as 2001. Sometimes you need to do something completely different.
And to be fair, he did, but at the same time, the problem with this actor, at least in these two movies, I don't know if I've seen him in anything else, but in these two movies, the problem with this actor is that he's too much of a blank slate. When he's playing Desade, arguably one of the most overly dramatic characters in literary history. Not just for his literary prowess, but because of his own life. The thing is, when you have to make a dramatized version of somebody's life, you have to hype up the actual drama. We barely even saw, like, smut-worthy drama here.
There were a decent...
Nunsploitation movies have more drama.
This movie had nuns, by the way.
Yeah, a lot of nuns.
But it was really in the very end, after he realized, fuck it. After, like, everything had gone wrong for him, at least in a fantasy. I don't even know if it was a memory. But he was essentially tearing apart the stage in his mind. And he was just going...
He's deconstructing.
Nuts about it. He was just like, alright, fuck it. Yeah, he's like cracking. He's just... Then they get into a huge, like, orgy in his bedroom. And everyone's into it. It just... That part, I was like, this man... If this man was present throughout the entirety of the movie, then I believe it's Sade. But he's only here and sprinkled through.
In his mind, too.
In his mind.
Like,
I have no idea what he was like.
Dude, Mozart was closer to Sade in Amadeus than Sade was in Sade. Like, he was rude, obnoxious, he hated authority, he flaunted it in front of the people. That's one of the reasons why he kept getting locked up, is because he never respected anybody. You got the guys wrong, everybody. Now, obviously, we're coming to the party here a couple decades afterwards. Yeah. But still, I mean, that's pretty much it for me.
Okay, give your final thoughts.
My final thoughts is really just the thing is, there was a lot of good effort put into this. The costumes were really good. The locations they chose were really good, considering. And they could have done a lot more with it. They had film. They had enough something. I know these budgets were shot on shoestrings and on shoestring time frames. But at the same time, what you gave us, you could have given us more. You could have given us more. But that was the argument of so many different types of things. So overall, the problem I had with this pretty much stemmed from the writing of Sade. Not necessarily the writing entirely, but the writing of the Sade character and the portrayal of the Sade character from the combination of the writing and the acting. It just didn't work.
I want you to imagine you're making a Bible movie, and you're given free reign on the character of the devil. You can do whatever you feel like with the devil. If you make him a suave, debonair man who never does wrong, you're wasting your full potential here. You can do so. I'm not saying Sade's the devil. I'm not. But
he's close.
He did a lot of things which I'm sure people at the time thought of him as at least the Prince of Darkness. But that's besides the point. The point I'm trying to make is, when you're given free reign with such an interesting character, why not take it? Why make it just your general, oh, well, we have to make him a debonair young man because he slept with all these women. But I guess we also have to throw in a little bit of that, what he actually was.
This guy was a rapist?
I mean, if you ignore that. Let's say Sade wasn't the focal point of this film. Let's say, like, 2001, it was all about the atmosphere. Fine. The atmosphere was decent. It wasn't anything great. It was decent. The editing during the, I guess, freak-out scenes... The scenes where he lost control, they were just insanity. It's faster cuts than I think than you could even get like nowadays on iMovie or stuff like that. Because that's a bitch to trim that small. But they were just like, now we're cutting to his mother-in-law. Back to the orgy. Mother-in-law, orgy.
One frame, three frames. One frame, three frames.
And now we're on to the next scene.
Tape.
It was a bit...
I can imagine trying to edit that on a regular cutting board and whatnot. Say, oh my god, 1 frame, 2, 3 frames, 3 frames, 4 frames, 1 frame.
But it didn't instill a sense of, like, building tension in me more than instilled...
What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, because I already had a sense of what the fuck was going on. They weren't showing anything throughout the entirety of the movie of, is this real, is this fake? Which was, admittedly, seemingly the point of the movie. To make you question how much of this was real. But I didn't want to go into it Inception. I wanted to go into it for Sade. I wanted the character, which is the problem. I don't want to keep talking about how the character's the problem. It was. So, all right, that's really all I have to say. So, in the end, acting. Whereas, what was his name? Houston?
John Huston.
John Huston, good. Everyone else, yeah, passable. Not a lot of good actors. Story, again, what they were trying to do, good. Maybe a bit too ambitious when they should have focused more on the characters. Passable. Not a lot of it. What did this movie have in spades? Matthew, could you help me out with that? What did this movie have in spades?
It had one specific thing in spades that was quite wonderful.
Yes. Kick it.
Areola, areola, areola.
Happy Valentine's Day!
All the bad boys want some roll, it's